It is Tuesday, November 19th, 2013. My name is Dale Tafoya, and this is another episode of Athletics Talk Now. We're a podcast and blog that celebrates the past and embraces the future of Oakland A's baseball. This is podcast number 122, and we want to welcome you, A's fans across the globe, listening on YouTube, Facebook, iTunes, Stitcher Radio, and our website, athleticstalknow.com. On Twitter, you can reach me at Dale Tafoya, and we'd like to welcome you to find us on Facebook. We're at A's Talk Now, and be sure to like our page. And on iTunes, search Athletics Talk Now for an archive of over 100 podcasts. And I think right about now, we need an A's fix. The club ended their season a little over a month ago on October 10th, and who better than to provide us with a taste of the Oakland A's than their radio voice, Ken Korach, who was there to witness firsthand how everything unfolded for the 2013 A's. He's also author of the great book, which I believe will go down as one for the ages in Bay Area sports, Holy Toledo, Lessons from Bill King, Renaissance Man of the Mic. It's, of course, a book about the late, great broadcaster Bill King. Ken, first of all, hope you're enjoying your well-deserved off-season, and thanks for hanging out with us.
Thank you, Dale. I appreciate it.
Ken, your book on Bill King was released in early September, and I see nothing but spectacular reviews of it on Amazon. At one point, it was the number one selling baseball book on Amazon. In the past, we talk about you writing the book about Bill King. Now describe the aftermath of seeing it published, book signings, and everything that accompanies an author.
Well, first of all, thanks, Dale. And you were a big supporter of the book from the very beginning, so I really appreciate that. It's been a remarkable journey, and it's been a heartwarming experience for me because sales aside, and we've been very pleased with the sales. As you know, Bill was such a revered figure, and he was loved by so many people in the Bay Area. And tragically passing away, as you know, Dale, in October of 2005. And very heartwarming for me to hear from so many people who have read the book and fans of Bill who grew up maybe listening to Bill and passed on through the generations from grandparents to parents to kids. And maybe in a small way, Dale, the book has helped to fill that void a little bit that was left by Bill's passing.
And you have some promotions coming up in the Bay Area as well, some book signings. Can you tell us about them, Ken?
Yeah, actually, I'm talking to you right now from San Francisco. Going to do a couple of radio interviews later today. And then, the end of this week on Friday at 11 o'clock in the morning over at the Costco in Danville, I'll be signing over there. And then on Saturday at 11 at the Costco in San Leandro and at the bookshop in Hayward, fine bookstore up in Hayward. And we'll be doing a signing over there at 2 o'clock on Saturday.
Nice. And how special, I have to ask you this, how special, with all that labor of love you put into this book, the countless hours, research, and interviews, when you see that book delivered to you in the paperback, your project completed, what goes through your mind and what was the feeling when you see that, all your hard work packaged in a book?
Well, it was very gratifying, Dale. I didn't really know what to expect and how I would react because when I started the project, as you know, it was a daunting thing for me to think about, not only having the discipline to write a book and then to do it about Bill King, because how do you really capture Bill? And that was somewhat intimidating to me, not only because here was a man of such diversity and also because so many people, I think, had an investment in Bill. People like yourself who grew up listening to him and had these ideas as to what Bill was like, and to try to capture that. The only thing I can tell you is that it was a gratifying feeling to know that I gave it my best shot. Now, I don't know whether it's the greatest book that's ever been written or not, or I'll leave the judgment to other people as far as that's concerned. But I do feel, Dale, that I tried my best and gave it my best shot. And I had a lot of help. As you know, Steve Ketman, the publisher of the book, and Pete Danko, who was the chief editor of the book, and then all the people that I interviewed. As I've said, I talked to between 55 and 60 people, and those people gave me the energy to write the book. So, I mean, there might be some things you can always look back at any project, and I would think and say, I'd do this differently or change this and that, but generally speaking, Dale, I look back and I feel like I gave the project my best shot.
Ken, radio play-by-play guy, spent about 8 months traveling with the club, and I'm sure it's a very rewarding yet demanding experience during that time. Tell us about a typical off season for Ken Korach.
Well, the last off season was atypical because I started the book project in late November and spent much of last season writing the book and doing the research and the interviews for the book. This off season so far, I guess the whole book experience has transitioned into one where there is that kind of public relations effort and doing some of the interviews and talk shows and traveling around a little bit doing some of the signings. But one thing for me, Dale, is for years I did football and basketball. I did 14 years of college football and 22 full seasons of college basketball. But around 8 or 9 years ago, I decided to pretty much take the off season off, and that's pretty much it. I wish I could tell you that it's this exciting and incredible experience, and I'm doing all these different things, but basically it's a chance to kick back and relax and spend some time with family and maybe play some golf and get involved in a few projects here and there. But nothing that's too taxing, I have to admit, in the off season.
The voice you're hearing is Ken Korach, the great radio voice of your Oakland A's. Ken, let's talk about the 2013 A's. They had a remarkable regular season, going 96-66. Of course, they were the AL West champs. What are some of the stories that stick out to you most from the season?
I think one of the things that really stands out was that this was a team that embraced expectations when the season began because they had won the American League West in 2012, as you know, and it's not that easy to repeat. And I think that was a very special accomplishment on the part of this team. And there was a point during the first half of the season when I think that was in doubt. But Bob Melvin was very steady with this team, even keel, the cliche about not getting too high or too low, and then winding up in the postseason and ultimately ending in disappointment, as everybody knows, losing the 5th game to the Tigers. But for me, it was the 7th postseason that I've been involved in the last 13 years with the A's. And I could honestly tell you, it was the most dramatic and most compelling. And from a sheer noise standpoint, there were games at the Coliseum, Dale, during the postseason, that series against the Tigers, when it felt like there were maybe 27 47s taking off. That's how loud it was. The challenge for me just to kind of focus on doing the games because it was extremely intense. And obviously losing again in the 5th game, another tough pill to swallow. But I'll never forget the intensity of the postseason and that series and the reaction from the fans. And even in Detroit, it wasn't quite as intense, I think, with the fan base in Detroit, but just doing the games back there as well. So that was really a lot of fun.
Looking back at that ALDS, Ken, against Detroit, how surprised were you that Sonny Gray got the call to start Game 5 instead of Bartolo Colon?
Well, I wasn't overly surprised because if you read between the lines on some of Bob Melvin's comments before the 4th game, that maybe they were at least considering not going with Bartolo Colon. So at that point, it seemed like at least a possibility that they were going to go with Gray, and certainly based on what he did in the 2nd game. And it was kind of the year of the young pitchers. If you look at not just the A's, but in many of the postseason series, it was the young starters, guys with very little experience, who kind of came up big in the postseason. The series really, you go into a 5th game for the 2nd straight year and facing Verlander, even though the game was at the Coliseum, pretty good chance you're going to lose that game. I think you can point to the 4th game.
Sure.
That was really tough, and that was frustrating, Dale, as you know. And even once the A's fell behind and they had the bases loaded, Max Scherzer on the mound in the top of the 8th inning in the 4th game. If you want to point to one single, I guess, sequence of events that led to the A's losing the series, I think you can look at the 4th game more than the 5th game.
Yeah, and at one point during the ALDS, Ken, it looked like the A's were going to finish the Tigers off in 4 games. But Peralta hits the 3-run jack in the 5th off Straley, and the momentum changed. And it seems, Ken, like it's those momentum changers that have haunted the A's in the best-of-5 game ALDS over the years.
Yeah, the disputed home run by Victor Martinez, too.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, the whole litany of events that have happened that are mind-blowing in a 5-game series. And as you know, the A's have matched up against a lot of very good clubs. I mean, my first postseason, 2000, you're up against the Yankees. In 2001, you have the Jeter flip, which turned that series around. Then you had the series against the Red Sox in 2003, where the A's had their faux pas on the bases, really turned that series around when the A's had a chance to clinch that series at Fenway Park. So you're right. And that, I think, is what happens. It's kind of the beauty but also maybe the unfairness of a 5-game series where you can really look at one or two events or one or two plays that can turn that series around, and you can lose it pretty quickly in 5 games.
In Game 5, you have a $20 million pitcher in Verlander dueling against Sonny Gray, who was earning the minimum, of course, as a rookie. After a series like that, experts always point to payroll as being the deciding factor. Ken, how much do you feel payroll is a factor in a best-of-5 series?
It may be, Dale, that I've been around the A's for so long that I don't focus on it a whole lot. After all, the A's won 96 games, and I don't think the A's have ever used the payroll as a huge excuse because they've been so successful. And as you know, it certainly decreases the margin for error. The A's have got to make great decisions. They can't make mistakes on players because the margin for error is so much smaller. But if you were to isolate that one game and say, yes, can the A's afford a guy like Verlander? Probably not. And so in that one game, was that a factor? Sure, because you're looking at one of the best pitchers in baseball. And if someone like a Verlander or one of the elite pitchers becomes available on the free agent market, that's not a guy really the A's realistically can go after and try to sign. So does the payroll become a factor? If you isolate one game in that fifth and final game, you could make that case. It's less of a factor over the course of 162 games, but the A's certainly proved that by winning 96.
A question for you on Twitter. John English Ken is asking, the big change came when Melvin took over for Bob Guerin in June of 2011. What changes did you see as most significant relating to that?
The only thing that I can really point to is that Bob Guerin is a guy who I think was in a situation as the A's manager where the team just didn't perform as well as maybe they could have or up to capabilities. And when Bob Melvin came in, maybe the culture changed in the clubhouse a little bit. Melvin is a guy who I think engenders a tremendous amount of respect in the clubhouse. And he's a guy that doesn't miss a beat. I've worked with a lot of people in my broadcasting career, and as far as even doing the manager shows, he's a true professional. He's a wonderful guy. And this is not to disparage Bob Guerin. I think the team on the field is better. I think the talent is better. But Bob Melvin, and the way that he relates to Billy Beane in the front office, he's as good as I've seen as far as in the clubhouse and also on the field. There are guys, Dale, who I think you could say, well, they're a player's manager. They're good communicators, and I think that's really paramount now in baseball. That seems to be what general managers are looking for and owners are looking for, a communication element. Well, Bob Melvin is very good in the clubhouse, but he's also very good on the field as well. He doesn't miss a whole lot in terms of strategy. He's really into the game. I think he's just the total package as a manager.
And I know Billy Beane could be very unpredictable in the offseason and make trades and sign different players. What are your expectations as far as the A's moves this offseason, embarking on 2014, Ken?
It's a great question. I don't know. I think this is one of those rare years, Dale, where the ball club is fairly set. I read where they were in on Tim Hudson, maybe finished second in the Tim Hudson sweepstakes with Huddy going to the Giants. I would have loved to have seen Hudson rejoin the A's, someone that I'm very fond of, as you know. They have to sort out the closer situation, but perhaps that's going to come in-house from a Sean Doolittle or maybe a Dan Otero or maybe a Ryan Cook. Maybe they, I tend not to pay a whole lot of attention to all the rumors. You know, they've been linked, at least from a rumor standpoint, to someone like a Nelson Cruz. But, oftentimes a lot of that stuff never comes to fruition. So, but Billy Beane is a guy who surprises us. And I would think that he would have a surprise or two up his sleeve. I think the one thing, do they want a right-handed complement at first base to Brandon Moss? Do they bring Nate Fryman back in and expect that he's going to make the ball club again? Or does Moss get more at-bats against righties and lefties at first base? What about replacing Chris Young in the outfield, a right-handed bat? Is it time for maybe a Michael Choice to come up and get that opportunity to play against left-handed pitching, or maybe playing even a little bit more than that because he's versatile and he can play all three outfield positions? So I don't think they need a whole lot of help. And I don't think they're going to make a huge splash in the offseason. But as I said, there are times when Billy has surprised us before. He might do it again.
And how do you think the A's will address the departure of a legit closer in Balfour, Ken? Can we see a bullpen by committee, or could they pin their hopes on Doolittle to be their left-handed closer?
Well, I mentioned that. I don't know. I don't know how they're going to approach that. I doubt they're going to go out and there are several closers available, but they're not going to be in the sweepstakes for someone like a Joe Nathan, I wouldn't think. I think it'll be an in-house candidate, and maybe they'll start the season with someone and see how that guy does. And if he performs well, it'll be his job. Even when Balfour took over as the closer a couple of years ago, remember they had gone through Brian Fuentes, they gave Cook a shot. Finally, Balfour emerged as the closer, and then he kind of ran with it. So I imagine maybe that kind of scenario will develop again.
Brian Fuentes, that's a name from the past. Ken, I know you work for the Oakland A's, but a big issue is of course, the future ballpark for this team, whether it's in the Bay Area or not. And I know it's a tough situation, but the Oakland Coliseum is your workplace, and I know fans sometimes don't understand maybe the setbacks of working in an outdated stadium. What's your hopes and what's your feelings about this whole stadium issue? And I know the A's are negotiating with the Coliseum right now on a new lease. Can you tell us your thoughts? And I know you're an A's employee, so you have to be careful. Can you give us anything about that?
I don't have any real insight as to what the future is going to hold. I can tell you this, that I was an A's fan and someone who went to a lot of A's games before I even started working for the team in 1996. I moved to the Bay Area in 1980, and even while I was doing minor league baseball, I would come back in September, and I spent a lot of time at the Coliseum as a fan, and I loved it. It was a wonderful place to watch a game. I'd buy a $5 ticket and sit in the upper deck. And I've said this many times, I think the integrity of the Coliseum as a baseball park was compromised when they built Mount Davis. And I think my feelings about the Coliseum and working at the Coliseum really changed when Mount Davis was built, because I used to love it. I thought it was lovely. And there are certain advantages, there are certain positives about the Coliseum. Even today, I think the weather is great. I think the access from the freeway and BART. But in terms of the infrastructure, the ballpark is decaying. And it's a tough place right now, and especially if you're looking at trying to, let's say, sell a free agent on going to the Coliseum to play half your home games. The scoreboards are very outdated in terms of some of the experiences you expect as a fan. I think going in, if the A's are going to stay there for any length of time, I would hope some of those things would be updated. We don't have to go back and relive the plumbing issues, but obviously I think those illustrate some of the issues with a stadium that's that old. Now, as far as answering your question, my hope is I think the A's need a new ballpark. I've said this many times. I don't think necessarily, Dale, that in every instance a new ballpark is a panacea, because we've seen stadiums. Target Field in Minneapolis is a wonderful place, but the Twins were a lot better team when they played at the Metrodome. Whether that's coincidental or not, it really hasn't helped their ball club. But in the case of the A's, I really do think they need a new ballpark. I think with the situation as it pertains to Bud Selig and his committee, my only feeling about that is, and there's been no transparency, so we don't really know the ins and outs of what's been going on. Just let us know. I think it's been very frustrating for the A's and for the fans and for all of us involved with the club to go through this terribly long and drawn-out process with this supposed blue ribbon committee, and we don't know what the resolution is going to be. So let's just know one way or the other, and hopefully that answer will be forthcoming, so then the A's can move on one way or the other, and their fans can move on as well from it.
And it's interesting because, Ken, when you arrived with the A's as a broadcaster, you weren't able to view the beautiful Oakland Hills from the press box, because I believe they were constructing Mount Davis, and the A's opened their season in Las Vegas, I believe, right?
They were... Yeah, it was my first year with the A's, and I sat in the very chair I sat in when I was broadcasting AAA games in Vegas.
Wow.
At Cashman Field. Yeah, they had a week of games in Vegas in 1996 against the Blue Jays and the Tigers. In fact, there was kind of a famous triple play where Ernie Young made a sprawling catch on the warning track out in right center field for the A's, beginning a triple play in a game against the Tigers. But yeah, we literally, Bill King and I sat there and literally day by day watched the beautiful view of the Oakland Hills become peeled away, whittled away with the construction. And if you'll recall, they were doing construction during the games. And there was one day, even though it was my first year with the A's, I kind of lost it on the air. Like, at least you'd have a little respect for the fact there's a baseball game being played here, and maybe you don't have to do construction while the game is taking place. No, that was a tough time. It was a tough pill to swallow. And I just hated it. I hated the fact they were building that edifice out in center field.
I mean, and of course, me doing a lot of research on the Bash brothers, Jose Canseco and Mark McGuire. You also played a role in A's history when you were a radio voice for the in the California League in like the early '80s, and Canseco, as a 19-year-old from Modesto, just crushed a pivotal home run in the playoffs. Do you remember that, Ken?
Yeah, 1984.
Yes.
I was doing the games in Rohnert Park. The Angels had their single-A club up there in the California League. A great team, by the way, that featured guys that would go on to play in the major leagues like Mark McLemore and Jack Howell and Bob Kipper, Devon White, Carl Nichols, and wound up playing the Modesto A's in the playoffs. And Canseco had a big home run in one of the playoff games. Yeah, absolutely. I think that ball is still in orbit, landing somewhere over the 101 freeway east of Rohnert Park Stadium.
Yeah, that's a fun A's history. That's the great Ken Korach. I'm Dale Tafoya. Thanks for listening, A's fans. And Ken, thanks for always painting so many great memories in A's history for us.
Well, thank you, Dale. I really enjoyed it, and thanks for all your support.